All right, thank you for all for being here tonight. We're going to start today with the Activities Committee. We'll start with public comment. According to Policy 903, public comment, which is limited to 3 minutes, should be directed to the presiding officer rather than individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. For confidentiality and privacy rights, specific comments regarding particular individuals must be communicated privately to the school board and superintendent via email at psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. We have one public comment to start us off. Kelly Small, come on up.
Hello, my name is Kelly Smola. I just came to speak my comments on the middle school math program. Based on the materials that I saw for tonight's meeting, it looks like it might be changing, that the proposal will be to keep Algebra 1 in 7th grade, which was what I would be here to support, doing that in the 7th grade program, as well as Geometry in the 8th grade program. So I am hopeful that that is what the presentation tonight will discuss. And still excited that the 6th grade differentiation is on there. I know all of my kids would have loved to have that option when they went through the 6th grade program. I unfortunately will not be able to stay and listen to your discussion because I am headed to another event. But I'm very interested to hear the recording of the discussion and what the presentation is. So I just wanted to present my support to keeping the 7th grade and 8th grade options for algebra and geometry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So first up on the agenda for this evening, we have the PSD Health and Safety Plan Review with Mr. Brad Palmer. Sorry, Dr. Brad Palmer.
Oh, well,
They wrote you as a Mr. on there.
we're not all. This is the health and safety plan, part of the ARP ESSER funds. Requires us to review the plan every 6 months, so we are reviewing it again. You will see that there are no changes from the last time we reviewed this, which I believe was in March. We'll scroll through. You can see that everything has remained the same, and hopefully this will be the last time we're presenting it because we'll be closing out our ESSER funds. Any questions? Wonderful.
Yeah, change the board president name.
Well,
Or was it originally under?
it's originally under that, so
Okay.
it stayed, it hasn't changed since that time.
Yeah.
But we are still following our same health and safety plan.
Sounds good. All right, next up, Student Assessment Data 2023-24. Dr. Brad Palmer.
All right, thank you. We were asked to really dig into student data, so what we have for you this evening is a look at student achievement data for the 23-24 school year. So, see if I can get this to work. Chester? There we go. I'm pressing the other way. So what we're going to be looking at is several different metrics. We're going to be looking at the PSSA data. Again, just to take this slowly, the PSSA data is the PSSA exam in ELA, grades 3 through 8, mathematics in grades 3 through 8, and in science grades 4 and 8. However, it will be moving to grades 5 and 8 with the adoption of the STEEL standards as well, our new science standards. The Keystone exam data will be here, which are our end of course exams in literature that happens to be in the 10th grade, in Algebra 1, and in biology. And those are given at the end of the course in whatever year the student happens to be taking it. So if you're taking biology in 10th grade or 11th grade, it doesn't matter, you would take it at the end of that exam. And these are used as a measure of performance and also for graduation requirements. One of the other things we're going to be looking at is PVOS, that is the Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System scoring. So PVAS is a measure of student growth. And the way that's done is we look at student performance in previous years. So the state takes that data, how kids scored on their PSSA assessment, and then they make a prediction into the future to see how should a student be performing the next year. And then they look to see, did students achieve at a year's worth of growth, above a year's worth of growth, or below? So that's what that measure is for. And you'll see here the indicators, the color indicators of well above, meets is green, below is yellow, red is well below. So those measures are used for a couple of things. They're used for us internally to really look at how kids are performing. It's used for our teachers and our schools, school and teacher-specific data to look at how they're performing. And it's also used in the educator evaluation system so that when teachers get their evaluation at the end of the year, part of that is a measure of the school performance and the performance of the students that are associated with that teacher. So if you're an ELA, if you're an elementary teacher, the ELA and math scores and science scores will be tied to you and your end of year evaluation. We're also going to look at APs. So our AP are also another end of course exam offered by the College Board. Students earning a 3, 4, or 5 are considered to be have achieved on that a level that could earn them college credit, depending upon your college. We're also going to look at the NOCTI exams. That's the National Occupational Competency Testing Institute. These are kids that are going to be at the tech school who will take these at the end of their program. So at the end of their program, they're going to take a hands-on and paper test that's really industry standards, and students can earn certification with these exams. And by earning that certification, they can take that with them out into the world.
And if I may, Mr. Palmer, so if you look at the advanced placement courses there, that is something sponsored through the College Board. And as Mr. Palmer just posited, you have the NOCTI there, which are students at Upper Bucks will take an end of the year exam, hands-on practical application. Recently, the College Board, they are piloting a program for career technical education students. One is advanced placement cybersecurity, and the other one is networking. So students, I think the College Board is probably seeing that schools are offering dual enrollment programs, and in order for the College Board to remain relevant, and they're exploring these courses. So we're very excited that the possibility later down the line we could offer these more CTE, thematically speaking, courses for our students.
So we're going to take you through a series of graphs. There's a lot of data here, so if you have questions, stop, ask questions as we go through. But I think as we go through the first couple, it'll make perfect sense to you what we're looking at, and you'll kind of get used to seeing what we have. So the first set of data we're looking at is our ELA data. So this ELA data shows the percent of students that are scoring at the advanced or proficient level. And this is by grade level. So this is across all of our schools, all the kids in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and overall. So you'll see here I have highlighted grade 3. That was one of our district goals. Over the last 3 years, our students rose from 59% at advanced and proficient from 59 to 69% over the last 3 years. On this, the light purple, that is the pre-pandemic point. That's 2018, 2019. We're missing 1920 because we didn't have exams during that. And then you'll see it goes all the way up to last year, 23, 24. So you'll see nice increases there going in the last 3 years. For each of these grades, we're approaching where we were pre-pandemic. If you look at the 8th grade, we're almost right back to where we were, 69% advanced proficient compared to the 70%. And really, I think the initial projection was it would take 3 to at least 5 years to recover from the pandemic era to really make up those gains. So I think we're well on our way. Other things that we look at, cohort data. So we look at how students are performing, the same group of students are performing from one year into the next. So the scores in the last graph you were looking at, those were different kids, obviously going from one year to the next. These are the same kids. So in the first column, I've highlighted the ones that are in the cohort together. The kids going from third grade into fourth grade this past year went from 68 up to 70%. So they increased the percent advanced and proficient. Fourth into fifth was flat. We had a little dip, 5 into 6, and 6 into 7, and 7 into 8. It was really flat, about the same. So our hope is that those students don't have a drop off. We do typically see, most people see a dip going from the 5 into 6, this kind of middle school transition slump, I would say.
What's the non-cohort again? So
The non-cohort is just on there. Those are kids that did not participate in one of the 2
Okay,
years.
got
So we really just want to focus on the circled ones. Those are the kids that took it both years. So I would say the number of kids on the non-cohort, really only maybe 30 kids. Yeah, the other one is, hundreds. We also look at data by program. That is, we have our data broken out looking at our English language learners, looking at free and reduced lunch students, looking at kids that have 504 service agreements, that are receiving special education services, and gen ed. So we can kind of disaggregate the data to look at how our students are doing. One of the concerns we have, our L students are a population we really look at to make sure, that we're servicing them to the best of our ability. Now, if you're thinking about it, we're measuring ELA for kids that are non-English speaking kids. So during the first 3 years, students can get translation for math and for science, but they're not going to get that for ELA because you're measuring English. And so the only thing that they can have translation is for the prompts for the text-dependent analysis.
And all directions,
Yeah.
all questions on the math and science can be translated. We currently don't have translators, but we are seeking translators to help students. They do have word for word dictionaries for the content areas, but obviously a non-English speaker is going to struggle with the literature and the English exam.
is that population getting larger or smaller?
We're pretty flat now. We went from a
9.5%.
handful of kids over the years to, how many, 300 and some?
Yeah, and then we've plateaued.
So what's that percentage?
9.5% to 10%.
And is any of this, do you think, impacted by just when they're coming to our district? Like if they've been here
It's much
a
easier.
couple of years versus this is their
Yeah.
first year here?
So kids in their first year don't have to test.
Okay.
In ELA.
In the
in
very
ELA,
first,
okay.
yeah, right. So then, over the first 3 years, we said those kids can get some translation services in some of them, but beyond that, students are gonna be tested. Now, if you're coming here at a younger age, it's easier for kids, I think, to pick up language. The earlier you're here, the faster you're gonna be able to pick it up. So when you look at the Keystone data, it's harder for kids, maybe that are newcomers earlier or later in life get there, but a lot of it has to do with the individual student.
So
We
the
have
child's-
27 languages, students of 27 different languages here, and the state only provides a Spanish version of the math and science
Yeah, students can get word-to-word
glossaries.
glossaries, but you're not getting text translated for them, so it's very challenging.
Yeah, so what do we do with a child that doesn't speak any English and neither does their family? How are we reaching them if there are no translators?
That's just for the exam. We have ELD teachers who are
Yeah.
teaching the students. These
That
are for
know
the
their
exam.
language.
Yeah, so the students that are here, we have protocols for translating documents. So we have protocols for translating things that we're gonna send out to families, our communications, helping kids to translate their schoolwork as they're working on it. But when you're talking about state assessment, it's simply not available. So for those kids, it's very, very challenging for a kid to take a Keystone or PSSA test.
Sends forth the low result.
But
Yeah.
you'll see in the science, when you see science, you're going to see the value of having that exam in their language, at least if I'm Spanish speaking.
Yep.
Because the numbers are much better when they have, like any child would, taking an exam in their own language.
So what are steps that we can take to improve this?
The program, it's programmatically is what we're really most worried about, right? So I had a meeting today with Jenna Vitale, who's our ELD coordinator, and Carly Baker, who also leads the way in our services for our English language learners. So we are building the curriculum vertically for students who are newcomers, right? So newcomers need programmatic changes that other students don't. So I think you've probably heard of the WIDA. It's called a WIDA. It's an exam that our Ls take, right? And their proficiency levels. So some of our kids come in at not speaking any English at all, and some of our kids, not that many, but we do have some students who aren't even literate in their home language. So you can imagine, right? The differentiation is rather large. So we have ELD teachers in our district from K to 12. So there's programming separate from the general ed curriculum. And then there are accommodations and modifications made for students within the general ed curriculum. So that's what we do here. And honestly, I think we're doing a pretty good job. In terms of the assessments with the state, the English assessment's going to be tough. The math assessment, the one thing that we don't do that we can do as an LEA is provide translators. And right now we do not, but we are seeking translators for the exams.
Do we ever see, like, the data of, like, how, when you have these kids come in elementary, what classes are they taking once they get to high school? Like, are they taking the advanced classes? Are they understanding the language fully? Like, is
You
there
would be really surprised. The kids who come in at the elementary level learn the language rather quickly. If
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Yeah, they
I mean, my
really
kids
do.
learn
They're
Spanish
pretty
first and then-
typical after a
Right.
year or two.
But once a student has moved out of that program,
Yeah.
we don't have,
Good data.
we don't really have good data of tracking kids, of these kids went into.
They may have been in the
Yeah,
program in second grade and they're now, a ninth grader. And they have been exited from the program, so they are considered part of that general ed number.
Right, but I'd be interested to know where they lie when they're coming in, from when they start, because you can get out of the program, but how advanced are they are they taking these honors classes, these AP classes, or are they up to that par to do that? I'd be interested to know.
I'd have to look to see how we could do that. I'm sure there is a way that we can do it, but I don't know how we would do that right now.
I just don't want them to get lost in the mix,
Yeah.
because you put all them together, and they're 9.5%.
Yeah.
So you're looking at everyone that is excelling, and then they may not, but then the numbers look better than what they are for that group. So I'm just interested to know.
Mhm.
Excellent question.
I have one more question around the PSSA. So are they given more time if they have to kind of translate the directions themselves? Okay.
Yes.
Every student is afforded
More time.
Okay. Yeah.
On this chart, what you're gonna see is the PSSA data and how it is calculated with PVOS growth indicators. So we talked about the colors that they use, the blue, the dark blue, light blue, green, yellow, red. So those are the scales they're using. So this is ELA in grades 4 through 8. And again, it's grade 4 because we have to look at growth from 3 into 4, then into 5, into 6, into 7, into 8. We'll see that the two areas of concern we would have here would be the grade 6 number. We see a lack of growth in there, where we see really strong growth in grades 4 and in grades 7 and 8. We're meeting, again, making that grade level worth of growth.
And just if I could add, so we're very aware of the issue here. And we break the data down into the standards and skills that students aren't performing well in. That is how we target our deficiency in that area. So that's, you can't see that there, but we can see which standards we're doing really well in and which ones we have to work on.
Yeah. If we tried to share everything we have, it would be about a 3.5-hour presentation, because we do have it by teacher, by school, by module, by content, how they're performing, so that we can go in and target those areas. So as Kathy was saying, there's a lot more data behind the scenes. Next, we're going to go into math. We're going to look at the same exact kinds of charts. And again, these are across all of our grade levels, 3 through 8, combining all of the schools together. You'll see that grade 3, we made significant growth over these past years and exceeded where we were in the pre-pandemic era. So last year was at 76, this year at 71. Grade 4, up from 55% to 72%, above where we were in the pandemic, which was 67. We were back up to even in grade 5. Now if we go down to grades 6, 7, and 8, even though we're seeing lower scores there, we generally have a trend, and I would say this probably across the state, of decreasing mathematics performance as we go into those middle school bands.
And I'll talk a little more about
Yeah.
that when Mr. Garsh comes back and talk about math, because this is all correlated to our proposal.
But what we've seen in terms of the coming back since the pandemic, you can see grade 6 growing from 22% up to 46%, basically where we were before the pandemic. Grade 7 going up, grade 8 increasing as well. Not where we want it to be, but increasing. If we look at the cohorts, grade 3 into 4, just a slight dip there. In grade 4 into 5, drop of about 5% for those kids, but we see that dip 5 into 6, some recovery 6 into 7, and a dip 7 into 8. So we are seeing some drops there in those, as I said, in that heading into middle school math.
And just one word about, before I'll do more of it, but kids who are in 7th grade taking Algebra 1 are taking a BSSA and a Keystone.
Yeah.
So they have to take 2 exams, and they're only in 1 course.
And cover 2 sets of content.
Mhm.
We do the same thing, looking at them by program, looking at our Ls, free and reduced lunch, 504, special ed students, and gen ed. And again, we see some growth in areas. We also see some flattening. Our L students are flat over the last few years in that math. For our PVOS growth indicators, you'll see grade 4 again in mathematics well above. We're meeting at grade 5, meeting at grade 8, well above in grade 7. Grade 6 again, that 5th grade into 6th into that middle school, we have an area that we really need to target and focus on in that grade 6. Any questions there? Science. Science is fantastic. It's really doing well. Our students in grade 4 up at 90%, grade 8 at 80%, well above where we were pre-pandemic. If we look at our programs, you'll see our students performing better in science than they were in mathematics. Our L students, 53% this past year, advanced or proficient. And our PVOS scores tell us the same thing, both for 4 and for 8 in the very high, well above a year's worth of growth. And again, let me just indicate here, there are changes coming to science. That is the Steele standard adoption. Part of the reason that we have our new science program is to make sure that we are on track for those exams.
Then this year, fifth graders will be tested instead of fourth graders, although they won't be held, they won't be held accountable for those field questions on the new standards yet. Accountability will be 25, 26. But we have a new program, so we're already working at the middle
Yep.
level.
Next, we're going to go out of PSSA into Keystone. So if we take a look at our Keystone scores, our literature is on its way up. We're well back where we were before COVID at 72%. Algebra at the middle school up at 83% last year on average. A couple of our schools were at 90, in the 90s.
100. Yeah, before.
Algebra 1 at the high school, however, continues to be low, down at about 21% for our students. And again,
That is because students are taking Algebra 1 in the middle schools in 7th and 8th grade. So your highest flyers in mathematics have already taken the exam, and you can see how they perform. Then the students who haven't taken it in 7th and 8th grade take it at the high school. And that is the way this middle school is designed. So you have students who are taking Algebra 1 in 7th or 8th, and they're taking PSSAs, of which are different standards than they are being taught on, that they're tested on. So theoretically is really part of the proposal that we've been talking about was, if students in 7th grade took the PSSA and were not in algebra, it boosts everybody's mathematical proficiency on the standards. The scores then will also improve. And then following the next year, if you took that in 8th grade, right, I've had another year and I've had the opportunity to master the standards. I don't if I'm in algebra. We do everything we can to infuse as much of the 7th and 8th grade PSSA standards into algebra, into geometry in 8th grade, but it's not the same. So if students in 7th grade were taking 7th grade math, whether it's accelerated or whatever we're doing, they would be taught the standards, and that is what the state wants us to do. Those scores would be significantly different. If we pushed it, then the high school scores are going to be better. You're going to have no one take it at 7th grade is really what we want. Some kids who reach advanced at a 7th grade level on a PSSA they should take then algebra in 8th grade. Now you have most kids mastering the standards in 8th grade and performing very well at a middle level, far more prepared. And then more kids are now taking it at the high school, better prepared, and the scores would go up. That is part of the thinking here, not just to give an advanced course, because these numbers stay the same. And we even sent surveys out to our middle schoolers about having to take a PSSA and a Keystone. And oh my gosh, look how well you did on your Keystone, but you didn't do that well on the PSSA. 9 times out of 10, it's like, I don't really need to worry about that. That's not the course I'm in algebra, I don't need to worry about that. And really, how fair is it to kids having to take two exams anyway? But that's the reality of state requirements.
Yeah.
So it is a lot to put on students. And it does take away the opportunity to master those standards unless they can take that CDT and have that mastered at the beginning of 8th grade. Then they should move on to Algebra 1. They should, because they will have already mastered them, but we're not giving them that opportunity.
we'd
So I
like,
have-
I'm sorry.
Well, so I have a pretty basic, what do you mean that the standards are different though? Like what?
The math standard. So our curriculum in 7th and 8th grade math is different from algebra, right? So the standards are different, the skills taught are different, and the skills tested are different. So we do, and we have been doing this for years, trying to put as much of that 7th and 8th grade content into the algebra and geometry, because now you have kids in geometry. They're far away from what at 8th grade math
When you look
is.
at algebra and we go into the state, you'll see a whole set of the Algebra 1 standards along with the eligible content that goes along with that, which
Yeah.
is, it's a lot.
Algebra.
It's a lot. I mean, it is what it is. But we're also having those kids, we're not really able to focus for those kids on, here's the standards that you should be meeting for the 8th grade PSSA as well. They're not actually, kids don't necessarily get to practice the same skills in that year.
Yes, that's my question. Like, so the Keystone standards and the PSSA standards at that grade are different then?
Yeah. So the hope, like, it would make sense because one is a end of course exam and one is like a grade level exam. It would be great if kids could just take the Keystone and we'd say, okay, that's your
Right.
score, but they don't do that.
And I think to clarify for you, the standards are not just grade-based.
Okay.
Standards are also course-based. So for instance, we have US history standards. Those US history standards, they're different standards depending upon what grade you're taking US history in. There are also, however, world history standards, civic standards, geography standards that have similar bands. In mathematics, you have 6th grade math standards, you have 7th grade math standards, you have 8th grade math standards. Those are the ones that are being assessed on the PSSA exam.
Right.
However, if a student is in algebra, they are not being taught to the 7th grade mathematics standards. Instead, they're being taught, here are the standards and content in algebra, and it's a different set of expectations because it's a different type of math.
So it's, okay, because I would have assumed that the PSSAs would have been easier standards than someone who's in
Different,
algebra.
not
Just
easier.
Yeah, they're different.
But I have a
But-
question, so for middle school algebra, they had higher, right? They performed higher, and they didn't have like a pre-algebra. These were kids that were just, you know, math. But then the high school, wouldn't they have had pre-algebra, so wouldn't they be more prepared? Or is that just wrong? Because I feel like they did have pre-algebra, yet they're not scoring as high. Am I missing something?
You're not missing something.
Okay.
Kids that are taking algebra at high school are not as good at math and they're struggling.
But they,
That's
and
part-
that's even when they had
pre-algebra.
Got it.
My expectation is I'd like to see 100% of the kids taking algebra in middle school being advanced or proficient. I don't want to see 83. I want to see 100. Because why are 17% of my kids not being advanced or proficient? Why would they be basic when you're grade level advanced taking algebra at the middle school? That's my thought.
You're 2 levels in 7.
In 7th grade, yeah.
You should be,
Those kids should be well above and beyond.
But what the data doesn't glean here is we have kids who are not proficient in Keystone algebra, but they're taking higher level math courses, trigonometry. So in addition, when we think about attempting to have students retake the Keystone algebra, Act 158 provides different pathways to graduation. There's a composite score a kid can take if they do well on their NOCTI exam, if they do well on the ASVAB exam, an advanced placement exam. When the Keystones originally were implemented, the goal of PDE was they were going to be a graduation requirement. There was going to be a civics exam and chemistry, and then the state walked that back, and now they still are graduation requirements, air quotes, but there are different pathways. So, and like I said, I think it's important to note that I don't want the takeaway for the public and the board to think that we have kids that didn't get proficiency that are still taking higher level math courses. Mr. Garish could probably speak to that during his presentation later, but it's a fascinating metric for sure.
If we look at growth, one really good thing you're going to see here is that our growth for each one of these is well above. That is, when you see that little line next to it, it indicates that it's outside the range of this scale. So for Algebra 1, for biology and literature, when we combine everybody, we're doing very, very well for our kids. If we look at by program, like we did for the PSSA, we'll see for the literature exam, our students who receive special education services are making gains, significant gains over the last 4 years in improving their scores. You will see L students there. We don't have students that are advanced or proficient. That is, at that level, a pretty small number of students. I believe that's only, it was smaller, less than, that's my wrong one. I think it was somewhere around 50-ish students in that ballpark. This is the middle school by program. You'll see students that are taking middle school algebra are doing very, very well. These students are obviously grade level advanced. They're taking it in the middle school. The high school, again, similar results to what we had seen before. We have students who are struggling. In science, as Kathy was saying, we do see some strong scores last year for our L kids, jumped up to 29% there for the biology exam.
Gifted's in these is, but then we don't have gifted in high school, correct? Like, so this, they were gifted in elementary school?
We have gifted
Gifted in the high
students in the
school.
high school.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we didn't have gifted math in high school. Oh, never mind then.
Yep. Next, we're going to go into our AP exams. We have some really good data here for you. You'll see that this is our highest number of students participating in the upper bar graph with 432 students last year who were taking an AP exam. The total number of exams given last year was also its highest ever with 795 exams. So the students are doing very, very well.
We anticipate that number will go up this year. I hope I'm not wrong, but we're offering 5 sections of advanced placement in human geography. So we open that up to 9th graders, and hopefully that number increases. So again, students who take this exam, get a 3 or higher, are eligible for college credit at most universities.
If we look at enrollment by subject, you'll see that math and science are the highest in terms of our enrollment, where students are taking our courses in STEM. Also doing well in social studies. English, it's a little deceptive because English, there are only 2 AP exams in English, Lit and Lang. So the students don't have tremendous numbers of offerings. World language, I think, is somewhere we'd like to see some growth. We had 18 students last year taking AP courses in there, and I think that's a spot where we have a chance to grow. How are the kids doing on our AP exams? They're actually doing very, very well. If you take a look at their average score across the top by department, our students are still continuing to score very, very high. Social studies with 4.0 is a fantastic average across exams. Percent scoring a 3 or above, so students who are doing very, very well on those exams. You'll see social studies again, 94% scoring 3 or higher last year. These are excellent, excellent numbers for us. And if you look at how we are compared to the nation, our average scores are above in arts and English, math, science, social studies, and we're just about even with the nation in world language. It is a little hard to compete in world language with native speakers in places like California, Texas, and Florida. Tough for our kids to do quite as well as native speakers, but our students are still performing very well. And lastly, for AP exams, our students can earn awards in the AP. Being an AP scholar with honor, or an AP Scholar with distinction. And you'll see that we've had the highest ever AP Scholars last year with 144. Those are students getting 3 or more AP exams with a 3. Highest ever with honor, 86, and highest ever with AP Scholar with distinction of 59. So those are fantastic scores for our kiddos, doing very, very well. The AP Scholar with distinction, the
May I
difference.
interrupt you,
Oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, but it's not only our students doing well, but it's also evidences the high quality instruction of our
For
teachers.
sure.
That they can go through and you know, they have to take coursework through the College Board, go to the AP Institute, but these are very, very rigorous courses to teach. So I of course want to commend our students, but I would be remiss if we didn't recognize our teachers here as well.
Thank you. That scholar with distinction, that's a kid who scores 3 or higher on 5 different AP exams and has a 3.5 or higher GPA. So to those 59 students, it's absolutely fantastic. Finally, the last scores we're going to look at tonight are our NOCTI scores. Again, our NOCTI scores, if you take a look, we've increased the number of students taking NOCTIs in the last 3 years. 78 students took a NOCTI exam last year, with 85% of the kids scoring either advanced or competent on that exam, which is really, really fantastic. So I think we're doing well for our kids, you know, who are in, you know, high AP colleges or AP coursework, and also for kids that are in technical and trade school. So I think that's a testament to the good things that are going on. Any questions?
How much do we think opting out? Has it gone up since COVID? What does that mean for our scores? I know you guys told us, and I'm just not remembering.
In particular schools, the numbers were, in all the schools, the numbers were higher during
Yeah.
the COVID era. Most of them have decreased significantly.
Okay.
There are a handful of schools where students, like, you know, close to 30 kids, 40 kids, are still opting out, which is really unfortunate. It's unfortunate all across the board because we want to see how every student is performing against the standard, so. But yes, we still have some schools that
How does it-
have a number.
Translate, is it just not even included, or are they a score of 0? Like, how is that?
They are not, good.
No, the scores, if a kid opts out, it adversely impacts
Right.
our scores.
Want to elaborate on that? I mean,
Yeah.
you've said
Yeah.
it can really, really negatively affect your scores because it's as if that kid did score zero.
It's like as if the student scored a 0, it adversely impacts us. So,
It's the number of kids too, in addition to that, because the state really wants every kid to take that test.
Mhm.
So really, you have to reach a threshold. And then when you really look down at the data, it's a lot of kids who would score proficient and advanced aren't taking the exam.
Right.
So they'll hurt particular schools, which hurts the district at large. So we do everything we can, and we have wonderful principals who are out there talking to families.
Yeah.
And we do all we can to encourage them. We may have every accommodation, we have small groups, we have one-on-one. I mean, we really do a lot to help kids who really, you know, may have anxiety over taking tests. But it has gotten a lot better though.
I think part of it is if we can get the message out there that, you know, it's called high stakes testing, but we use that diagnostically. How are we doing? How are the kids doing? How can we help them? If a kid's doing particularly poorly in an area, how do we adjust the way we're teaching them? How do we adjust the content? Those are all really important things for the school to have.
And they're indicators for the higher course levels. So they're recommendations. We use matrix, right? You do a matrix. And these are data points within that. So they are used for students because we're talking about middle school math, we're talking about algebra, we're talking about geometry,
Yeah.
we're talking about higher level courses, and we do use this data to help make those kinds of decisions and recommendations.
Which leads to my next question. Do we still have the data coach position? Like who, this is a lot. Who did all this?
We do this, but
Wow.
Stacy Clemmer is still working with us. She's
Okay.
a coach,
Okay.
but she works very closely with the high school and the algebra course.
Right.
Yes, she is very much involved. Her title is not data coach, but she has worked side by side with the teachers at the high school.
Well, I just feel like when she was in that like official role, she's doing exactly what you said, where she could even pinpoint students that maybe want to do a different path, and like, is that still happening? But just
Yeah,
whoever picks it up.
we're also working on the fact that we're using Linkit now.
Okay.
Well, not that we haven't been using it, we're using it more now. So like over the summer, all the principals, they took their teams along, the supervisors. We did a training at the IU, the summit, and really dug into how do we use it best. You're seeing some of the graphs and information here. You can dig into individual kids, groups of kids through Intervention Manager. It allows you to take all of your kids in your group that you're looking at, track them, see how they're doing, predict where their performance is going to be. The CDT data is also in here. Our benchmark assessments are also in here for mathematics. So there's a lot more data in there. And part of it is building the capacity of our principals, our supervisors, our coaches, our teachers, to really get the teachers trained to be able to use that data, and ultimately get students and their parents to see the importance of their individual data and how they're doing. So taking ownership for their performance.
I still have a question with the opt-out. Why is the state jeopardizing the school district? You've got X number of kids by their parents are opting out. It doesn't seem like it's a fair number, because, like you said, they get 0. They really shouldn't be getting anything. It shouldn't be a 0, because 0 really adversely affects your total number. But if you take that particular opt out of the equation, the numbers change drastically.
Wait, are they getting a 0?
It doesn't affect achievement, it
Yeah.
affects participation.
I think it's more that you're assuming if they didn't take it, they're not in here anywhere, right?
We lose their
But
score.
what that inherently assumes then is that they did at best average. And it looks like what a lot of the students who opt out are, some of them are higher achieving ones that if they had done it would have helped the overall scores. But that's how it adversely affects, but it doesn't adversely affect that they like impute a 0.
I
and
guess I
average out.
construed that in the wrong
Yeah,
way. They don't get a 0, they just opt out, they're not part of the numbers.
I probably articulated that incorrectly. Not probably, I did. But it hurts our attribution with respect to if they don't take the test and they could have earned a proficient
Okay.
or advanced.
Understand.
It hurts.
Yeah.
And we want to see how well they're doing.
Right, so that it would help the students to take it.
Any questions about data, other stuff?
But they should be exempt. If we're exempting them from the exam, then they should be exempt
From the
from
whole process, the whole
Exactly.
system, right?
in the calculation
Oh, wait, so explain that again. Exempt,
So if I opt my son, if I call the school or email the school and say, I don't want my child taking the PSSA, then when we calculate the number of kids who got advanced, proficient, basic, they should not be part of that formula.
so they're part of the denominator then,
Correct.
okay. All right, so they aren't in the average scores, but they're part of the denominator.
They're
when
part of the
doing
denominator,
percentage. So that is,
It
okay,
does hurt school.
it does.
Hurts it.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you.
When the next meeting will be, Jen?
January.
January 2nd?
I was gonna say you didn't put it on the agenda, so.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
All right, let me go check public comment. I think we're good. our curriculum committee meeting. First up is the AP Latin proposal.
Can I use it for just posting enter? Yes. Oops, sorry. So just move it this way?
Chris isn't here.
Okay. Here? Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Leanna Goodrich. I'm the head of the World Language Department. I'm technically a German teacher here, so I am here to support Matthew Colas, who is our Latin teacher, who wrote up the proposal that is before you all. Matthew.
Hello, everyone. Well, I think I better, do you have questions for me before I say anything?
I just want to say, this is Matthew's first year here at Pennridge High School, and I can't thank you enough for coming tonight, really.
And I can't thank you enough for accepting the position. Latin teachers are very, very difficult to find today. And we thought there was a possibility we'd have to collapse Latin or pause it, sunset it. And anyway, you're our savior.
Well,
Yes,
well,
and I will
thanks.
tell you, I was raised by 2 Catholic school parents. The not teaching of Latin apparently is the demise of education, according to my parents. So I'm happy to see you here.
Thanks.
You want to just talk overall about why we would be considering adding an AP Latin?
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. So, I think that there are a lot of students who might take, there are a lot of students who meticulously plan their high school career with college in mind. And I think that there are a lot of students who might take Latin, but don't because there's no AP at the end of the road, and maybe they take something else. So we want to add AP to draw those kinds of students in, and we want to offer another opportunity at our school. Okay, we want excellence in opportunity. So I think we can do that with AP. Now, as far as the curriculum is concerned, College Board is putting out a new curriculum for AP starting next year. For years it has been Julius Caesar and Virgil, and Julius Caesar is not in the curriculum any longer, but Virgil is. So they're replacing Julius Caesar with Pliny. And so all the texts are ready to rock and roll, at least for Virgil, and some new ones are going to be rolled out for Pliny soon. There are some out already, although I have not looked at them. I have not ordered an exam copy yet from Bolchese Carducci, who publishes great texts for these. Now, on the curriculum development, I have put for the Virgil element, half of the course, the Clyde Farr, which is unparalleled and will never be surpassed. It's tremendous text. And it has a workbook also, which will probably be revised because most of the Virgil remains, but only some of it is shaved off. We are also accounting for the same kinds of texts which will inevitably come out for the Pliny half of the course, but which have not been published yet.
And that's important because we can't say which books we're going to use yet, and I think that's the point of.
Right, because they're on the way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you will have to go through training, like Mr. Barrios was talking about. When you are a teacher teaching an AP course, you have to go through this training, so that's part of this proposal as well.
Yes, of course. And besides that, I've also put the Paideia Institute, which is headquartered in New York, offers various opportunities for classical learning, and they offer courses on special topics. There is one right now, a Pliny course, and there will probably be one in the future. The enrollment for that has filled up very early and completely with Latin teachers who are anticipating teaching, of course, plenty in the AP curriculum very soon. And so, should that course come up again, which it probably will, we are accounting for that also.
I have a question just on AP courses in general. When they're developing, because it looks like that was a new program, I'm assuming they get input from different districts and teachers who are teaching similar classes, or? My point is like, since if we approve to do this, can we get involved in some of the curriculum for it, or is it all done completely outside of like their own group?
Well, I can say this, the new curriculum, as I said, replaces one author, but it also, instead of doing two authors, there's one author, a second author, and then some open space for teacher's choice, they call it. What that will be, what the readings will be, and they also have added a project for the students to do.
Okay.
So it's not only a reorganization of the content, but a reorganization of the course.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any further questions?
Now, you teach Latin, correct?
That's right.
So have any of the students, like, do they know about this, or are they kind of excited about possibly taking an AP course? Has that conversation even come up?
I mean, I've said it in class, and some of them are. Yeah, some of them are.
We are in rebuilding Latin. We had a really strong Latin program, and it has slipped. But now we have Matthew here, who's going to help rebuild that program for
And
our
that's what we want to
students.
do.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Next up, we have the Advanced STEM Lab, Product Design and Development STEM 3.
That's my bedtime, but daylight savings time. One comment about the Latin program. It is good to see the Latin program moving in a positive direction. Had a couple rough years. And we do have a real strong history of it in the past, what was being done. All right,
So-
being the old guy here, I have to go through a little bit of a history here and educate you. All right, in the fall of 2015 is when we started our study program here at Pennridge, and we had a club then where we had ukulele building and also electric guitar. After the very first open lab that we had with these students, one of the students comes up to me and says, "Next year I want to build an acoustic guitar." I'm like, oh my God, where am I going with this? All right, so that year we ran it as a club, and then the following year we had it as a class, where we had 2 semester classes of ukulele building and also the electric guitar building. Then in 2017, our middle school program, they developed the STEM program and it was implemented then. And our middle school program is unbelievable. It's phenomenal. Really good program. So then in 2018, we had a pilot program on the electric guitar building. And then the following year, we had that as a class. So basically, we've gone 10 years of transition. And what we'd like to do now is convert what's currently our metal lab into more of a STEM fab lab, and help us out with some of our needs that we have. The STEM lab is a collaborative space for learning, creating, and sharing that encourages creativity and experimentation with an emphasis on problem solving. In our area, Northampton Community College we've used them to help us develop our program. We've also used Millersville to help us develop our program. The need that we have is that for probably the last 4 years, our middle school people have said to us that our students want to take STEM 3. They want to take the next level, considering that they've had it in 7th grade and they've had it in 8th grade. They want to continue along with that. And I guess they've said it enough times that we've heard them, and we're trying to listen to them and develop something that'll help us with that. Each year, the students are able to use different machines as they grow. And what's produced as the end result in the problem solving is much greater. So by having the STEM 3 and STEM 4, again, we have different machinery that they haven't used at all, and they'll have the opportunity to use those machines. Another need that we have is to be able to have this lab functional and be able to use for some of the other classes that we teach. Our woodworking program been unbelievable with the numbers that we've had, and this year we filled our wood shops. We need some other place to go and put some of these students. So in this lab, we would have the opportunity for that. So when you look at a STEM lab, some of the names thrown around are basically the same, just kind of depends on what you call it, whether it's a fab lab, fabrication lab, a maker space, or what fits me is a hacker space. So now what we're going to do is have Mr. Jeffrey Swartz talk about the two classes that we have. The reason being that this all came about with what he took in Millersville and what he thought were his best two classes that he had.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Swartz. I actually graduated here from Pennridge in 2017. This is my third year this year at Pennridge and my fourth year teaching overall. So last year we had our metalworking teacher resign, and we have our metalworking shop vacant right now, and we were trying to come up with a way to think of what we could do with the lab space. So Alan and I kind of came up with the idea. I came up with the idea of basing these two classes and this lab around, like he said, the classes that I took at Millersville. Two of my favorite classes that I took were called Product Design and Manufacturing Enterprise. And those two classes are what I'm trying to build around and build towards, while also catering that towards a high school program as well, and giving that problem solving opportunity, those skills to high schoolers to develop different products and to use a variety of different machines for that. So the first course that we are proposing is called Advanced STEM Lab, Product Design and Development, and that would be our STEM 3 course that we are proposing. So again, this is building off of the programs that we have in our middle school. They are very strong programs where the students learn a variety of different machines. They work with a variety of different material types and mediums, and we are trying to further that education and further that career path, if you will, down towards problem solving, engineering, design, different things like that, where maybe they don't want to specialize in a woodworking or specialize in a metalworking, and they want to be a jack of all trades engineer where they can work with different material types and design different products. So this first course, the STEM 3 course, or Advanced STEM Lab Product Design and Development, is based on that product design class that I took. Now in that course, what we do is we give the students a design challenge, and they are tasked with either working independently or in a group and collaborating with one another to solve whatever problem we throw at them. For example, in college, I came up with a new set of flatware for the Liberty Flatware Company, and we had to make flatware that came out with 3 different material types, and it had to be pleasing to the eye and all this different stuff, criteria and constraints, and we were thrown into it. We would throw students into a problem that they had to solve. They have to do the research. What makes flatware appealing to an audience? How many pieces are in a certain set of flatware? It makes them think about things that someone may have never thought about. People just go on Amazon today and order the cheapest set of flatware that they can. But you're looking more in depth at what makes something great, what makes something ergonomic, what makes something different that sets it apart from that cheap set that you can get on Amazon or that expensive $1,000 set that you can get somewhere else. And they develop those materials, they develop those products to solve a problem that everyday people may have, and they document that process. So the culmination of this class is at the end of every single project, they come up with an oral and a visual presentation where they document what was my research, what did I do during this process. They come up with a mock-up, a model, and a prototype of each one of their products, and they present that to the class. They present it to the presenter, or the instructor, excuse me, and they go forward and show their entire method of thinking. Now, they can either work individually or in a group for this. We're trying to push their collaboration skills with this class and their solving skills out also. So this is a little bit more of working with different machines that they might not have, and like Alan referred to, moving to that next level where we make things with some plastics, some woodworking, some metalworking in the middle schools, and take that to the next level and keep building upon the learning that we get in our lower level classes. The second course that we are proposing is STEM Innovations Lab, Manufacturing and Product Entrepreneurship, and that would be classified as our STEM 4 class. So again, that next step and that next level. Our second class is built around the course that I took at college called Manufacturing Enterprise. And in this class, it takes it, again, that next step forward, where kids are creating actually a business with their group. Each student is in charge of a different head of the business. So one person would be head of advertising, one person would be head of packaging, one person would be head of production, one would be a CEO. And they create a product. They basically create the problem for themselves. They say, we see a need in our community for a new luxury dog bowl, or something like that. That's what I made in college. We made dog bowls. So we found a need at Millersville for dog bowls. So we created a luxury dog bowl for all of our college students that couldn't afford our luxury dog bowl. And we created a whole business around that, where we marketed it on campus, we packaged them ourselves, we created them ourselves, and we really made an entire business around that product. And then we sold that product, and we were able to keep all the profits in college and put the money towards the materials that we wanted. So we put up our own money, depending on who could provide what money. That broke down, again, at the end of the class, we did this profit sharing where if you put more money towards the product, you ended up getting more money back. And you really learn the ins and outs of a business, how to run a business successfully, what labor looks like, what costs look like, what should you really be selling your products for. And I think at the end of the day here, like best case scenario for one of these classes is maybe one of these students finds an interest and creates an actual business out of something like this. Maybe they find that spark and they make something that is truly different, makes a product or a business that they can continue on further through high school and after that. And that would just be awesome if we could get to that point. But those are our two classes that we are proposing. Any questions about those?
Why don't we put this one back up? Because this has the costs.
Yes, and these are shared costs for both of the courses. So it's for the whole lab space that we're trying to convert into that Fab Lab, makerspace, whatever term that you want to use for it. At college, it was called the Innovations Lab, where we had a variety of different mediums of materials that we used and machines that we used for our products.
So the proposal is it would be like the class you took, where they would actually create a product and sell it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And of course, we would try and gear it more towards the high school level. Like we were able to do a lot more in college, but our hope is to be able to get high schoolers up to that level. And I think with our strong base of the middle school program, they can get to that level if they continue on through this course throughout their high school career.
And they would seed it themselves with their own money?
That is yet to be determined.
There are
That,
different rules in high school.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that-
was kinda curious
that's
about
what we did in
Yeah.
college. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how we would get around that, if we would do, we haven't crossed that bridge yet,
Okay.
but if there, we'll see, yeah.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands, this is the cost of the program, but not the cost of lab work, correct? The actual high school budget would include that, so you would have to see what that cost is, because it's not included. Is that
That's-
correct, Alan?
Yes, that's the electrical work and also dust collector. Electrical, the school electrician would handle that, but the cost of wire and that kind of stuff. And then there's a gentleman, fortunately, that lives in Harleysville that we use for dust collectors. So we'll meet with him and then find out what needs to be done. So supposedly, I guess, that needs to be taken care of by the end of the month.
Did you want to add anything?
I think Jeff did a fantastic job explaining those two courses.
I didn't want to leave you
Furthermore,
out.
they also teach a lot of life skills other than just the problem solving, but also the cooperation of working with different people in different roles. That can help all the students, not only with just the course itself, but also whatever they choose to do with their life moving forward. Many people go into different industries where they may fulfill some of those roles or even just use those same skills towards whatever they want. And also to stress the not limited to just working with wood or metal. Like I also took these classes. My manufacturing enterprise class, we started a candle business. So instead we worked with glass and wax and different things like that. So there's endless possibilities for these students can really do pretty much anything that they want and to pull students from a diverse range of backgrounds and interests.
And I think it sounds exciting. I know with students that I know, and my son who took STEM at middle school, you're right, the STEM program at the middle school is amazing. So to hear that you'd be able to have here and have so much more, I mean, I'm excited about it. And you did a wonderful job presenting it too, so
Thank you. Yeah.
to the three of you.
I see the students who want to get into engineering taking these classes. I like the E in STEM. I have so many students that say, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an engineer. And I say, do you really know what being an engineer is? You're designing things. You're not going to be building anything necessarily. You're designing the products that are going to be going out to the public. Someone else will be building them. And these classes kind of give them a hand in both of the things. So the designing process, but also bringing those products to life as well. And it can give them that avenue of getting prepared for an engineering program at one of these great schools or colleges that they want to go to, or a more technical path if they want to take that.
And I think if we want to have a robust STEM pathway, this is a step in the right direction. And I've personally been to Mr. Andrikaitis and Mr. Schwartz's classrooms, and they're just incredible, the good work that's going on here. So to expand on these rich course offerings, and although this is in its infancy, we're in very, very light talks with the Upper Bucks Tech School. So if we were to have an elective here, if this were to be board approved, trying to create opportunities for students to maybe get over to Upper Bucks Tech School to have to work with some of their engineering equipment and to try to and make sure our students are graduating and are competitive. And I commend Mr. Andrikaitis, who, when I arrived last year, was going to retire. And then he agreed to stay on this year to give us a half year. And recently, I'll have you know, you probably approved it. He is going to see this through. So right up until the end, Mr. Andrikaitis, I appreciate your
So after the
vision.
board approved it, the very next morning, he's in my shop saying, I want you for 2 or 3 more years. Not gonna happen.
Well, thank you.
Thank
for
you.
saying
We have
that.
good hands here,
Yeah.
Thank
real
you.
good
Yeah,
hands.
this is really
Great
exciting. I like
future,
it.
for sure.
Yeah. And I agree. I think it's a nice way for kids to get a taste of it that aren't necessarily want to do tech school, but like, I like it.
I think where it's really nice is they're able to walk around and do something.
Yeah.
They aren't sitting in a chair the whole time, looking at a computer. You know, they're actually doing something.
And then just the reality of everything that goes into everything we use, like even your pens, nice.
They make
pleasant.
pens at the middle school,
Mhm.
from scratch, yeah. It's amazing.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Sure.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you.
Next up is the proposed honors advanced computer design and animation for grade levels 10 through 12.
That is not a.
Sit here if that's okay.
No one's gonna bite
I will go back. I had to see the PowerPoint. Are we connected?
Unconnect, what am I doing? Should I disconnect
You can,
or just leave them on?
Hello, good evening. I'm Sarah Moose.
Craig Sudak. Voice is a little raspy, it's been a long day.
And we are presenting an advanced computer design and animation course. It's going to be sort of the second, well, not a second level, but sort of an adaptation of our intro to animation course. Since Craig will be teaching the course, I'll pass it off to him as I hit the next on this slideshow.
All right, so listening to the, oh, we'll let this go first.
Okay, well,
I'll just talk, and we'll play as we go. You know, one of our things is we keep hearing STEM, and we're an art course. You know, STEAM would be great. But what we do is the essence of STEAM. So just a little about me. This is my second career. I used to do this for a living. I was an animator, I was a director, illustrator. I worked at Nickelodeon for years. You know, this is what I did. I did medical illustration. So advanced computer design is really like near and dear to my heart. So beyond the fact that I really enjoy it, it is something that is everywhere, more so than you would think. Obviously, entertainment, movies, video games, right? That's what you think of. Education, medicine, military and police, architecture, engineering, manufacturing, marketing, project planning, augmented reality, and what these guys were saying, industrial product design, right? All like encompass what we do. We do have an intro course, and we cover the basics. But as technology evolves, I kind of realized that in 9 weeks, it's next to impossible to teach what I need to teach. I'll give you a scenario. If you had to make a building in 3D, vector-based, okay? So you're using X, Y, Z, you have a vector. You combine vectors to make a shape, you combine shapes to make a polygon. The polygon is used to make an object. You can take that object, you can make it move. We used to do that by hand, okay? Click, 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 click. Technology evolves. 5 years ago, what we used to do is kind of still relevant, but it's a little irrelevant. With technology, it's growing rapidly. So today, you would take that same vector, you would put it in a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet would be able to be read by the computer. It can throw it into a node. The node can go into the geometry node, which could take that building. So instead of, say, take 5 days to build a building or a character, what if you could devise a neural network that would allow you to do a city in 3 days? And that's what industry wants. They want kids who are going to think outside the box, right? And it's almost like visual coding, so it isn't art. Like you still have the art design. Sure, you can show some of this. It's hard to connect the dots, but I'll explain. So this is some of the basic stuff. This is kind of how you can create things from a fine art perspective. Okay, this is basically you would create a digital sculpture. Okay, these are polygons like I was talking about. And you can take a digital pen and you can sculpt like a piece of clay. But once you have that piece of clay, it's so dense, what can you do with it? You have to reconvert it into like a lower dense mesh that you can actually articulate.
build a skeletal structure, map those polygons to bones, take the bones and be able to rig it to be able to be animated. It's a complex process, it's a lot. And our standard is that when a student leaves us, or when they leave me, or whatever, I'm used to them coming back to me and saying, I got an A, because I learned more from your class than I learned at school. So I came in there, it was so easy for me because you explained everything, and I was way ahead of everybody else. My latest student is at Pixar now, and which is awesome. Pixar is like high end. And she said, I was way ahead of my class because you taught me everything, and nobody else did anything. I was just like right here. And I want to make sure that we continue that. And I feel like 9 weeks is not long enough. I'd like more time.
So we're going to extend it, the course, most of our courses are only a semester or, 0.5 credits, so we're going to.
Quarter, 9 weeks.
We're going to propose to make this a year-long, 1 credit course, and also make it an honors course. So that's what we're proposing.
So we talk a lot about math. So we can look at things in 2 ways. You can definitely, I could hand you a character that's rigged and built, and I can show you how to make it move. I can give you assets to build sets, whether it be, let's say, for a video game or for a movie, or if you were doing a medical animation, I could provide you with the heart, the structure, and then you could animate a camera going through it. That's great. Like that's important for kids to know. I feel like for the intro, a lot of kids want to, hey, I want to make video games, or I want to make a movie, but they have no idea what that really means. And it doesn't mean sitting down and playing a video game. I mean, that would be great, but there's a reason that it takes years and hundreds of millions of dollars to make these things. It is a huge process. It's one that often involves team building. It's hard to do it on your own. If everybody contributes in a group, you can probably get something done. So if you can get together as a group, and you can divide the tasks in a way that you can come together in the end and you can successfully complete a project, like that's how it's really done. I do think it's important for the kids who do want to do something in these fields to just generally see how it's done. I think that's great for an intro class. I can give them assets, I can show them how they work, but to really do this for real, you have to be able to build the assets. You have to design things from scratch. You might need to know, hey, I learned what's a sine or cosine. Well, what if you could use that to make an oscillating movement? And then use that oscillating movement to make a butterfly fly procedurally over time. That's pretty cool. It's like, wow, I never really thought I would use this ever in my life, but you do use it. You do use math. Biased again, but to me it's the ultimate art form. You get to write a story, create a story. You get to storyboard it. You have to design this world, whatever it's going to be. Build the set, build the characters, light it, rig it, animate it, film it, take the film, bring it into post, add any special effects through After Effects. Take that video, go into Premiere, add sound effects, cut it, and then at the end, if everything goes well, you have this thing that never existed. You had this creative vision from start to scratch. It's awesome. It's awesome. Like the kids, when you get to start with nothing and then to see what you come up with at the end, like that's the idea. Can't do it in 9 weeks. It's a huge task. It's a lot. And if you look at the programs, the schools that offer this, Drexel, Princeton, Villanova, these are good schools. If you look, they have these programs. They take a student a little bit above. It's hard, but it's worthwhile. And another thing that I'll cut it off. I have students come to me all the time saying, I would love to take this class, but I can't take the hit in my GPA. Some of these kids are on the track where they're going for a scholarship. I have my same kids the same way. They will not take, they take gym over the summer because they're worried about gym class affecting their GPA because it might affect what school they get into. I think it's important to offer, I feel like we offer a lot of kids opportunities for art, but some of these kids, you say, I would love to take this class, but I'm not taking a hit on my GPA. It's a lot of work. I think the rigor deserves an honors credit. And it also is gonna provide an opportunity for a lot of kids that I know do not take the class because they're afraid of hitting the GPA. Which is a shame. It's a shame.
It is a shame, and we've been through this with Alan and his group with woodworking and advanced woodworking and how that really deserved an honors credit. And I've seen what the kids do in your classroom.
It's
Like,
really amazing
unbelievable.
what they can do. It's,
Yeah, I support that.
is it more?
No, I think that's it, we kind of highlighted.
I kind of hit
Yeah.
everything without
Yeah.
the PowerPoint per se.
Well, no, yeah, you were,
Alan?
I
Yeah.
think curriculum, one thing too, the concept of a portfolio, getting these kids really like career ready, career pathways, understanding what as a working artist, how to promote yourself and how to advocate for yourself, to leave with an actual portfolio that they create, I think is a really important element to the course as well.
And I'll also say this, I have kids all the time will call me, email me and just say, hey, Mr. Sudak, I need a portfolio. Do you have my project from 5 years ago? So I can look, but you know, I don't always keep your stuff. So you know, you should always tell all our kids, you never know. I had no idea I was gonna do anything with art, and then you know, I'm graduating, and I have this job for the paper, and they want to see some of my work. Do you have it? No, I don't have it anymore. So it's a great opportunity to show what you can do, and it's a competitive world. I tell these kids it's super competitive. It's worldwide. You're fighting. It's not just here. You have to fight people around the world, and your portfolio is what matters. Here's what I can do for you, and let's be honest, people are going to hire you depending on showing them what you can do. Why do they want you over somebody else? Well, here's what I can do. It's great. I mean, it's also it encompasses everything: math, science, literature, art. It's everything in one. It's awesome. It's really cool. It's a great way for kids to express themselves, but it is a really big learning curve. It's a lot of work, but worth it. And if nothing else, they'll learn the rigor of, hey, if you're going to school, like this is the expectation. And if they can do that, they're going to sail once they get to school.
So you're looking at it being honors and then it being 18 weeks, 1 credit.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess depending on how if they, you know, it could run all year if they wanted to do it the AB day.
AB.
Like I have an
It's AB.
advanced I have an advanced studio art class that runs all year, but it's AP.
Got it.
Yes.
So
And
you
then
have
these
the year-
students too we've got more students too that are taking AP because you can take AP Studio using any medium. And right now we have a few students that do digital, but animation is coming forward. So that'll give them an opportunity to even this isn't not the end all be all course.
They
will
can
still have
pipeline
to-
into AP too, and they'll usually they stand out. You know, with most kids.
Would there still be the 9-week courses also?
I still do that. I
Okay.
still have. I think it's important just for some kids to have an intro, just to kind of see what you can possibly do, and for the kids that want to go further, they can, or for the kids who are ambitious and just say, hey, I want to start right here. You don't have to take the intro. It wouldn't be a prereq. You could go right in and you could take the course.
Is this an art or a math credit?
It's an art credit.
It's an art credit, but we're hoping to get this to become part of the STEM.
Yeah, the hard sell is if you're taking an elective and you sit and you see, you know, a nodal network and you're like, well, it's a tough sell
Yeah.
for a class that might be a lot of work. Thus, I think honors credit is justified. I think it's gonna, okay, it's worth it because I get the extra credit to do it.
Right. And is the software they use, is it on their school laptop or
Yeah,
their?
so here's the other thing. I mean, when I started doing this 100 years ago, software was $100,000. Then it went to 20. Then it was about 5 or 6. And now it's free, essentially. They have free software. I tell the kids, you know, who pays for this software? If you look at who pays for it, NVIDIA, Pixar, all these tech companies, they donate millions and millions of dollars to have this free open source software. And I tell them, why do you think they're doing this? Is it because they're kind? No, it's because if you learn this, they don't have to train you. They're providing it for you because you can go out and you can learn it, and then you come to the workforce and you're ready to go. You don't have to spend 3 years training you, which you used to have to do. Now it's accessible to anybody. That's another thing I tell the kids. You can go home and you have all this software at your fingertips. All you have to do is, truthfully nowadays, you pop onto YouTube. There's 10,000 videos how to do anything if you have the ambition to do it and you have access to the software, which there used to be a wall that you couldn't touch unless you were, you went to one of these universities who could afford the software. Now it's open to anybody, which is pretty cool.
And I know Mr. Barrios is very excited about expanding our STEM pathway, but STEAM sounds wonderful.
That sure does sound
I
wonderful,
know.
doesn't it? Has a beautiful ring to it.
And we can read all our stuff. I mean, it's
Well, it's interesting when hearing that class and talking about, product design and the artwork on the packaging, like, that's what, we have an art design class that a couple of the projects that we do are product-based. Obviously, those toys allow for a lot more, but that would be a beautiful place for some.
we do that in our digital too. I have a industrial design project. And I let them use their imagination. It doesn't have to be based on reality. Kids will do a robot that wakes you up and flies you to school. I let them, use their imagination a little bit. But the idea is we give them different careers. Okay, what does an industrial designer do? What's a product? Most people don't know. Like, kids don't know that. And the cool thing is with them, I say, your job is to conceptualize an idea, design it. You design it in 2D. You draw it. You schematically figure things out, and then you can hand that off to the engineers. Their job is to figure out how to make it. Your job is to come up with the idea, and you partner with them. It has to be made, but they don't realize, oh, wait a minute, I don't necessarily need an engineering degree per se to be a product designer. I mean, my imagination, my creativity, but it's a whole different field, which is great because we kind of do the 2D aspect. This is a different class. This is the 2D class, but they could conceptualize ideas. We could go to those guys, which would be awesome, and they could see if they could take some of our concepts and actually, if their kids could make it, which would be a neat kind of intertwining of.
I like that.
It could be neat.
Crossover.
Because the world is, let's be honest, it's teams of people to be able to do all this stuff. Though it's getting faster, like I said, like the technology goes quick, and it. What took a week you could build it by using, it's not AI per se, but it's basically figuring out how to procedurally create things as opposed to manually doing it. And I also tell the kids, look, going on YouTube or going on TikTok is not technology. Looking up doing your math homework on a computer is not using technology. Using technology is using it to work for you. To do something that you can't do. Use the computer to do something that you couldn't ordinarily do. That's using technology. And we are really fortunate that we do have a cool lab. You guys have been great providing us with access to everything that we need, which is awesome. The kids have a great opportunity, so hopefully we can. It's pretty cheap. It won't cost $80,000, but I would take $80,000.
Yeah. You can find something to do with it.
Yeah. We have everything we need, which is cool. We just need a computer lab. That's what we need, access to computer lab.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For coming out.
All right, voices. That's
Yeah.
from talking. We started new classes, so it's like day one.
Check.
So I'm talking all day. My voice is not used to that. I gotta get that.
Mr. Garrett,
Thank
you
you.
want to come
Thank
here?
you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, we have the middle school math proposal with Mr. Gersh.
Sorry.
Like the last part of
This is which one it's on now. Thank you.
Good evening. How are we doing today? First, as I was back there taking notes during Dr. Palmer's presentation, a couple things. Gifted math, because you had that question a month ago
Yeah.
about that, and then we're confused because it showed up again.
Right.
So we don't have a gifted math course, but students at the high school still can have a GIEP that they're classified as gifted
Okay.
students, and
Thank
therefore
you.
they would then get a subcategory to see how they do on their math tests.
Got it.
So
Thank
I
you.
think that there is some.
That was helpful.
There's
It was one of my
Right,
questions.
right.
So-
So, but there's not a specific gifted math course.
Thank you.
that they're-
Okay.
Another thing that came up was that it's just that was the discussion about the students taking the PSSA and taking a Keystone in the same year, and those students have to take both of those tests. And there was a question about like the standards are different. So the Keystone is the Algebra 1 standards, and then we have our 7th grade math standards and our 8th grade math standards. And the question about they're different. They are different, and then was one easier or harder than the other. I would say, let's say at the end of 7th grade, if a student took the Keystone without ever having the algebra, they would really, really struggle, but they could get through the PSSA 8 if they wanted to. So in some ways it is a little bit easier on the 8th. And then looking, I ran some, after seeing Dr. Palmer's the stats that he was going to talk about, I ran some of those numbers about the students who are taking both of those tests. Let's say I looked at last year, the 8th graders who took it last spring, and see how they did on those two tests. So on the PSSA and on the Keystone, they were taking both. And 66 students stayed the same. So they were advanced on both, or they were proficient on both, or they were basic on both, or they were below basic on both. I'm not sure why we had 26 students that scored basic or below basic on both of those tests. And again, that goes back to our conversations about these students are getting into Algebra 1, but they are not proficient in even their grade level content. So there were 66 students who stayed the same. There were 7 students who did better on the PSSA, a better level, like got advanced, and then were lower on the Keystone. But we had 90 students do better on the Keystone than on their 8th grade PSSA, which is kind of odd because the 8th grade PSSA, that's the content they're supposed to learn in 8th grade, and they're missing that, and they're scoring below this harder to Algebra 1 test. So that's interesting, including we had 57 students who actually were proficient in Algebra 1, but were not proficient on the 8th grade skills that they have because they got into an algebra class and we trained them to do the algebra. So I just thought I'd bring that up because that conversation came up. Also, there was mention about the students who move on to higher levels of math, even though they're not proficient. And just one number I just looked up, that we have 86 students in pre-calculus classes or pre-calculus honors that were never proficient in algebra. So they got into algebra early, didn't pass it, and they just have now been struggling along, and now they're in pre-calculus and haven't passed that.
Just a quick curious question. Is the Keystone exam actually harder than the 8th grade PSSA, or is it just a different math?
I would say without taking the algebra course, that Algebra 1 Keystone would be more difficult than an 8th grade PSSA. Like a student who got through Math 7, a lot of that content they would be able to be okay on, where that algebra, they would see that like, whoa, I've never seen this before. They'd struggle.
So, and thank you for the explanation. But I'm still a little confused too, like why someone who's doing so well in Algebra 1 would struggle with the PSSAs.
Well, because they didn't see that content, they've never seen that content. There are things that that would be taught in an 8th grade
like
math.
It is multiple types of maths. It's not just one type of math. Algebra is a specific, narrow focus math course, whereas this is one type of mathematics that we are doing. Whereas if you take a leveled grade level course, you're being exposed to some geometry, you're being exposed to some algebra, you're being exposed to some probability in mathematics, you're being exposed to some additional pieces of number sense, you're being exposed to lots of different subject areas, as opposed to the algebra class is just about the study of the type of mathematics known as algebra.
Yeah.
Geometry, same
Mildly
thing.
accelerated though because the kids are, okay.
Right.
Got it now. that was the piece I was missing. Like, I don't understand if our good math students, why they would struggle with the
Yeah,
PSS.
because once you get into algebra, and that's kind of the argument I have
Right.
made, is once they're in algebra 1, you're getting through, there's a long list of algebra content standards that you have to hit in algebra, and you're focused solely on that. You don't have time for probability and statistics, any of the interesting things.
It's that linguistic trick
Yeah.
in the English language, where in American English we call it math because we think of it as a linear progression.
Yeah,
Whereas if you go to many European countries, they call it maths
yeah.
because there are many different types of mathematical thinking.
I went to college.
All right, so that clears up my notes from,
Thank you.
from the
Sorry.
earlier presentation. So just what I wanted to go through here, I was here in September to talk about and get the conversation started about our middle school math program and the kinds of experiences we want for our students, and how we're serving them and to get them prepared for later on. So there's been lots of conversation, which is great about that. We've talked about having 2 levels of 6th grade math. We have had lots of positive feedback about that. The teachers, from students, parents, have all felt that, although there is another side to that. For the most part, everybody's been very positive on that. Developing a 7th grade honors course I've talked about that wouldn't have students jumping into an algebra 1 and 7th grade, that would focus on that eligible content to make sure they hit all that they need to. And also just listening to the engineering people up here beforehand and the art and design people. I just started jotting down some notes about them talking about engineering. These students get in there and don't know what it's about, or these classes that use a lot of math, but they don't know what students don't know what they're really about unless they're in art classes. And when I met with the 7th grade middle school teachers and we were talking about, I know a board member had a question about the name of the course, and we were kind of brainstorming that. And the middle school math teachers, some of which are former Pennridge students, were talking about the classes they took at the high school in discrete math, which isn't a lot of students take that, or our engineering classes and all of those things that they just didn't know anything about. And just listening to these people talk about the engineering classes and that design class is something that we really want to consider about what our students are able to see in the middle school, especially our high-flying students who are excited about math and engineering in those programs, to get them that opportunity to see all of those different things. So there was definitely some positive feedback about putting in a course for those students, and I think what we heard from the high school people this evening kind of speaks of that. There were concerns about the implementation and of what cost would that be to put in a course like that in the 7th grade, and is that going to slow our students down? There's also moving Algebra 1 to 8th grade. There was actually some very positive feedback about that from the middle school teachers, from parents who have students that felt like maybe their child was in Algebra 1 before they needed to be in there, and how they got burned out or didn't enjoy math. So there definitely were some positive feedback about that, but there definitely were concerns, especially from those with students in the top 5% of our population, worried that if we move things a year for algebra, that's just going to push everything off and they'll never get to where they would before. And we've done our best to try to explain that we didn't believe that was the case, but that is still something that concerns parents. It's come up about the doubling up of math. And students then, to get to their highest, may take math in both semesters of high school. Although we're trying to understand why, if our students were high flyers and were going to go into careers in engineering and that, why we wouldn't want our students to be taking math all year long. That seemed like that would be a positive thing to do. But yet people do have concerns about, is that going to limit a student's ability to do other things. There are also some concerns about the science program, and that's not something that was ever really addressed in the presentations beforehand. We've talked with the science supervisor about that and had ideas about what would happen 4 years from now. So based on the program studies as it is, yes, there would be some issues as the way the program of studies is written currently, with prerequisites to courses and how that we would get through that with students. Right now they're looking at, our best students come here, have taken this course, and the prerequisite in the book says they need this course to go here. So we would need to make some of those changes. Again, we didn't throw out make that presentation. We didn't throw out a lot of ideas because we didn't want that out to start focusing on the science curriculum. We really wanted to focus on what's best for our middle school students. And we felt very confident about being able to solve any of those issues concerning the science program. But there are definitely concerns that we talked about. The last one is probably the most important one. That this one isn't just dealing with, our very top 5% of kids, is there is a middle school scheduling committee. So there's a number of administrators and teachers and board members and parents involved in looking at the whole middle school, not just math, everything. I'm not going to speak about their findings. At some point in a meeting, I would think after the new year, that committee is going to come and talk about. But it was kind of important to hear all of those things, and there are groups going out to all different middle schools in Bucks and Montgomery County and looking to see what their schedules are and what their program is. And one of the things that came out in relation to the math program in the middle school is we want to make sure that what we do is all part of a bigger program, that we don't want to now change things too much in one area and then that handcuffs us in what we think is the best thing for all of our subjects in a middle school program. So we did have lots of conversations about that, and that did concern us a little bit about making hasty things here and jumping this when it seemed like there wasn't a lot of support to completely eliminate Algebra 1 from the 7th grade, and then if we put 4 classes in 7th grade and they're coming from 1 and 6, that may be lots of things happening at once. At the same time, we're looking at other middle school schedules and what we're going to do to support all of our students in all of their classes. So I think from that, we started looking at maybe the best approach would be to focus in, and there was positive feedback about some of the things we want to implement into middle school and these other opportunities in this 6th grade math program, which that is our current units for Math 6. And looking to, and we've had support and positive feedback about having a math accelerated program and have that be a place where we begin implementing some of these things that we talked about in previous meetings, because now we have a group of students that is going to be moving through that Math 6 curriculum pretty quickly. That was some of the feedback we had from some parents about their child in Math 6 when they were all grouped together. Then my student is bored. I know what else can we do there. So I think that's an opportunity for us. Those students go from Math 6 right into Algebra 1 without really, and pre-algebra in math is kind of like what really defines pre-algebra. But those students, and I think it was mentioned earlier that those middle school students weren't taking pre-algebra, although the 8th grade students that take algebra in the middle school, most of them did have a course called pre-algebra in 7th grade. But those students who are taking algebra in 7th grade aren't taking a pre-algebra course. So with that accelerated version of Math 6, that gives us an opportunity to take a look at some of those concepts there. And then some of the other things we talked about, infusing some coding in there, interdisciplinary units with our TWIG program, some of those things that we talked about the high school courses like discrete math and some of those concepts to make sure students understand what those things are all about. And then a unit on data science, and that's machine learning and decision trees. It's the very basic, but to get them in 6th grade start thinking about that, because by the time they're getting to high school, AI is not going anywhere, and understanding all those concepts would be important. So I think what we're looking at here is, that's the top progression, is to eliminate that option for next year of having Algebra 1 moved in 7th grade, so keeping Algebra 1 as a 7th grade option, and only thing there that's new would be that Math 6 accelerated class. The only other thing that I do have is last meeting we talked about some data, and I just wanted to share this with you, and then I think Dr. Scheid has some slides as well with some data. You're going to go over those?
Yes.
Okay, so here's just the way to read this. Is the top row is the class of 2022. So that's the group of students who graduated in 2022. And this is looking for that cohort of students. When they were in 7th grade, there were 187 of those students took Algebra 1 in 7th grade. And then moving to the right, a year later, 8 students dropped out of that highest track. And we had 179 in geometry. Then we lose a whole lot more as they go to Algebra 2 honors, 145, 131 to pre-calculus, and then 65 the AP, AB, and then 9 students made it to BC. So again, for sake of transparency, COVID has definitely effect on that 9. That's coming the year after they just went through where they really prepared. And looking at that, and you can see that before we started this conversation this year, the number of students in Algebra 1 has been dropping because we've realized long before I started here that that was a problem, and they started making the criteria a little more difficult. So the number of students in Algebra 1 has continued to drop in 7th grade. But you can see as when we get up to AB Calc, we still have the same number of students. So it's just those students that we didn't put in Algebra 1 in 7th grade weren't the students probably who were getting the AP Calc anyway. So that just kind of gives you a visual of the progression of these. So we're looking at 5%, and that's where I've said the number 5% a couple of times. So over these years, we started, the average has been 144 students starting in algebra in 7th grade, and the average is 23 of them have stayed in that highest track all the way to AP Calc BC.
So it wouldn't hurt them to take algebra in 8th grade.
Right.
So that was the one point. And the next 2 slides are the same, if you want to go.
Sure.
Are the same slides that Dr. Palmer was showing, because it is important to know what our why is. Why were we bringing this? And I think that Mr. Gersh has done a wonderful job explaining most of it. The other part of it was we also understand that the state requires students to know and be able to do such, and they're called state standards. And the implications of students taking algebra in 7th and 8th grade impacts PSSAs. It doesn't just impact the scores, it does, and it's going to continue to do that. It also impacts student knowledge, right? And understanding, mathematical thinking. So it was a combination of what I definitely have seen over the last 10 or so years, and what we really wanted to challenge students, who are our highest flyers. So we thank you for listening to that, and we understand that there were some people who maybe aren't ready for moving 7th grade algebra out this year. And as we go through middle school scheduling, we'll, with your permission and you agreeing, move to we're calling it an honors 6th grade.
Accelerated. Because that matches up with the ELA at the middle school. They have in 7th and 8th grade, ELA 7 and ELA 7 accelerated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
And obsolete books for review.
Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about that. That is. So we went through many lists. Last year there were a number of books that went to the obsolete list, and we tabled them. There were some questions about books. We went back, we did all of them over again. Everyone was reviewed by a librarian, a principal, and then I reviewed everyone after that. So everything that you're seeing has been reviewed 3 times. And most of the books you see on there is, there's a lot of damaged books. There were no books removed for any other reason other than they were books that the students weren't taking out anymore. So all the librarians are trying to make sure that our library is filled with books that kids are interested in.
So I just have one quick question. So if a book says like physical condition, like I know Pete the Cat is like super cool in elementary, and I see Pete the Cat here. So does that mean that book is like replaced, or is
that book is well loved?
Yeah. So then so it could be then we get a new Pete the Cat. Okay.
It would just be the books that are damaged.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll continue that process. We're moving slowly but surely.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Would any of our public like to comment?